Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jamaica 411. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you all doing? I hope you're all great. If you're here with me for the first time and you would like to have notifications of whenever it is that I upload a video, please go ahead and subscribe, and YouTube would send you notifications. Yes. Also, please give the video a thumbs up, share the video, and feel free to leave your comments in the comments section. As for my subscribers, welcome back. It's always lovely to have you reading your comments and learning from you as well. You learn from me, I learn from you. Yes, that's how it works. Yes, you have some opinion, dear man, and I do enjoy them. So, as always, go ahead, give the video a thumbs up from now on. You know the ropes. Please share and return as soon as you've sent it out into blogosphere, to your groups, and to your families. Everyone, I would like you also to share the video to someone you have not shared it with before so that we can grow the channel and get the message out. Takes a lot of pressure off you as well, because I'm going to help you out by spreading the word. So go ahead, please. And of course, you're always welcome to leave your comments in the comment section. Yes. So now that you're all back with me, let's get down to business. So, as always, Jamaica is never ever short of its controversies and persons who seem to be saying opposite things about the same thing. So, the other day, Mark Golding, the Englishman who prims up in our parliament illegally, was saying the economy was doing well. We have solved the problem of the debt and reducing the debt. So GDP ratio, it's now around 70%, and among other things. And now necessity requires that he sings a different tune, that the economy is not going well, because an election will be coming up, and he needs to give you the impression that the economy is in bad shape, whether it is yes or no. He is hoping that he'll be able to convince you that it is, whatever it is that you may be experiencing yourself. And this, he believes, is the formula for winning the next general elections. Yes. So, the Englishman is now telling us that things bad. They are running around telling us that the economy is in a recession. Ralston Hyman, the financial analyst, leads the way. Then you hear the Englishman, and then you hear Bunting, and you hear others talking about the economy is in recession. 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline, and the economy is in recession. Now, Dr. Wayne Henry had mentioned that a recession is only one of the indicators that's used to determine whether the economy is in a recession. And he mentioned that the IMF and the World Bank uses a standard, which would be the international standard. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and read what the IMF said is a recession and when a country can be said to be in a recession. I will also let you hear what it was that Dr. Wayne Henry said about the status of our economy. Then I may let you listen to the Englishman for a bit, and then we'll go to Colin Bell and that interview he did last year, December 2024, to hear what it is that Ralston Hyman's analysis was of the economy at that time. And you are going to be surprised, but I'm telling you, you are not more surprised than me. I assure you of that, because Ralston Hyman is a man with a very high reputation. At least the Ralston Hyman I used to listen to in the past. So this is the Finance and Development magazine. I found this on the IMF website. And it says recession, when bad times prevail. What is a recession? It is a sustained period when economic output falls and unemployment rises. So let's get down to what it is now that they say is a recession. So when exactly do you call it a recession? It says there is no official definition of recession, but there is a general recognition that the term refers to a period of decline in economic activity. Very short periods of decline are not considered recessions. They never said what that means, but I would imagine that 2 consecutive quarters of economic declines is not strictly a recession. Anyhow, they go on to say most commentators and analysts use as practical definition of recession 2 consecutive quarters of decline in a country's real inflation adjusted gross domestic product. And they say that the gross domestic product, what is that? The value of all goods and services a country produces. So, in essence, what the IMF is saying is that most people are considering that 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline, that is a recession, but they're arguing that a short period such as that ought not really to be defined as a recession, and they're going to explain why. So they went on to say, although this definition, and the definition they're referring to, that a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline. That's what they're talking about. So they say, although this definition is a useful rule of thumb, it has drawbacks. A focus on gross domestic product alone is narrow, and it is often better to consider a wider set of measures of economic activity to determine whether a country is indeed suffering a recession. Using other indicators can also provide a timelier gauge of the state of the economy. In other words, they are saying if all you're going to do is look at the gross domestic product, you might get yourself in a little trouble because you may make an assumption that is not true. And what you need to do is not only to look at the total amount of goods and services, whether there is growth in the economy or not. Don't look at that alone. Look at other factors, and then you will see now whether the overall picture is one that suggests that, okay, the economy look like it in a problems. You follow? Yes. So let's continue and hear what else they have to say. So, by way of explaining to us what exactly they mean, they are giving us an example of what happens in the United States. So, they say in the United States, the private National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, which maintains a chronology of the beginning and ending dates of U.S. recessions, uses a broader definition and considers a number of measures of activity to determine the dates of recessions. In other words, in the United States, there's a private body that is called the National Bureau of Economic Research, and their job, or at least a job that they have taken onto themselves, is to attempt to determine when the United States economy is in recession. They need to know when it starts and they need to determine when it ends. And this determination is going to assist entities such as the Federal Reserves, which is the equivalent of our Bank of Jamaica, to determine whether or not they should increase the interest rate to slow down the, if the economy is overheating, to slow down the credit, or they're going to reduce it to stimulate economic activities. And the way to do so is to stimulate consumer spending. The National Bureau of Economic Research Business Cycle Dating Committee, so they have a committee, defines a recession, because if you're going to If you want to determine when a recession starts and ends, you must know what a recession is, and therefore you must know what you're looking for. Isn't that true? Yes. So they have a committee, and they say that it is this committee which defines a recession as a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in production, employment, real income, and other indicators. So let's make note of all of this. So for them, a recession, this is the body that now looks at the recession, determine when it begins, when it ends, and they defined a recession as a significant decline in economic activity. And that's the first thing. Secondly, they say for there to be a recession, it has to be spread across the economy, not just a segment of the economy, but across the economy. That's the second criteria. The third criteria for determining whether there is a recession in the economy is that it must last for more than a few months, not 2 months, more than a few months. And the fourth indicator is it should normally be visible in production, employment, real income, and other indicators. What do they mean by that? That you should not only see a decline in the GDP, gross domestic product, economic growth, right? They are saying you must also observe what is happening with production. Is there a decline in production? And if there is, you must also look to see whether there's also a decline in employment. In other words, production overall may decline, or production may decline in part. In the case of Jamaica, we have the bauxite company, for example, is a big part of our production. And so if that declines, then it will have an effect on the economic growth. However, it may be that while bauxite is down because there's no demand for it overseas, you may find that the service industry and other areas like agriculture may increase. So you cannot just take one item into consideration when you're determining whether or not your economy is in a recession. You have to take a group of stuff, the production, you have to take the employment. Look and see if your employment rate is declining as well. You know, more people are being unemployed, which means that business is now laying off people, perhaps because businesses are closing down or because business not making money. Yes. And then now you look at the real income to see if people are taking pay cuts, right? That is a sign that something are going on in your economy, and they're saying there are other things you can look at as well. See what I'm saying? Yes, that is my understanding of what it is they're saying. Let me read that a little further to see what other insights the IMF may give us. According to the committee, a recession begins when the economy reaches a peak of activity and ends when the economy reaches its trough. Well, what exactly do they mean, peak of the activities? It would almost suggest that there's a bubble. You know, you've heard people talking about economic bubble where things just a boom and a go on with itself and so on. Yes. And then at some point, it appears as though it maxes out and then things start to decline. I think that's what they're talking about. And when it starts declining, there is a bottom that it will reach before it starts to come up again. I think somehow we have hit rock bottom on several occasions and we have risen, but not to where we hope we would be. Yes. Anyway, they went on to say, consistent with this definition, the committee focuses on a comprehensive set of measures, including not only gross domestic product, but also employment, income, sales, and industrial production to analyze the trends in economic activity. So, what are they saying here? So, having set out a definition of what it is that they are looking for in terms of a recession. Whenever the economy is in recession, they need to see the signs. And so what they are looking out for, they are saying, is what is happening with gross domestic product. Is it declining? How long has it been declining for? The next thing they're looking at is the employment rate. Are people losing their jobs? Is the unemployment rate increasing? That's what they're looking out for. Then they want to know, even if there's no unemployment increase, they want to see now if people have been arranging pay cuts with their workers, right? So rather than lay off people, they ask the people to take a pay cut. You follow? And then they're looking now at sales in terms of whether there's a decline in sales. And for this analysis, they will be looking at wholesale and retail prices. And this is an industry which sells directly to consumers. Now, what about industrial production? They want to see if car manufacturing is going down. These are the indicators that they are looking for. And then they say when they gather up all this information, they're going to now analyze to see the trend in economic activity. So when you see in the United States, they keep telling you about every month they say employment rate gone up or it gone down, right? And there is growth for the month or the quarter. These are the indicators that they track. And then if they notice that these areas are in decline, then they will now be able to put the information out, and the Federal Reserve, which I believe is the equivalent of our Bank of Jamaica, will be able now to use interest rates to stimulate the economy by reducing interest rate, and then people, the consumers, will borrow. And then when the consumers borrow and start spending, then the business will say, "Ooh, economy are going again," and so the thing set, yes, and then them start to invest, because business will not invest for the most part. As I said before, business will not invest for the most part unless them see the things them a fly off for themselves. Yes, because what's the point of you investing into something and you're not going to make back your money? Right. So what they attempt to do is to stimulate consumer spending by lowering interest rates. You understand? Wonderful. So let's read on and see if there's anything more from the IMF. So they go on to say, although an economy can show signs of weakening months before a recession begins, the process of determining whether a country is in a true recession often takes time. So you may ask, what are some of the things that may cause a recession? Understanding the source of recessions has been one of the enduring areas of research in economics. There are a variety of reasons recessions take place. Some are associated with sharp changes in the prices of the inputs used in producing goods and services. For example, a steep increase in oil prices can be a harbinger of a recession. As energy becomes expensive, it pushes up the overall price level, leading to a decline in aggregate demand. So, what are they saying here? That a recession, an economy can be thrown into a recession based upon certain inputs. When you talk about energy, which affects everything, the household as well as business, if there were to be the OPEC and other players in the oil industry were to suddenly put up them prices, that could throw every country in the world who are not oil producers into a tizzy, right? And that would increase everything locally. Everybody would have to increase their prices, and then the workers start to demand more pay. You understand? And so businesses could find themselves in trouble, as happened in October of 1973 with the first world oil crisis when the OPEC, those Arabs, they decided to double the price of oil, if my memory serves me right. And whole heap of countries, including Jamaica, had to turn to the IMF because the sudden jerk that we got overnight, we couldn't sustain it. So we had a balance of payment problems, and we had to turn to the IMF for assistance with paying for, well, providing us with the foreign exchange we need to pay for our imports and so on. Yes. So they're saying that when such things happen, because the prices have gone up and people for the most part are on fixed income, they have to restrict how they spend. And that now is going to affect businesses and them going to start to collapse. Follow? Yes. So we are now going to turn to home. It says economy declines 0.9% in 2024. This is our economy now. And this is an article in the Jamaica Observer. Let's see what they said happened to the economy. So here is something very interesting. Despite the fact that so many industries, there were declines reported for 2024 between January and December. Look at what the employment rate is, the unemployment rate. In October of 2024, and this is the same period in which they said our economy declined by 0.9%. You remember that? Yes. Our economy declined, they reported, by 0.9% last year. And it's during this time that we experienced our record low unemployment rate. Let me read it for you. In October 2024, Jamaica's unemployment rate was 3.5%, which is a record low. This is a decrease from the previous record of 3.6% in July 2024. So while the economy is declining and we have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, the unemployment rate is falling. How, you say? How that? Well, what could be happening is that more people are going into business for themselves. They're becoming self-employed. Since COVID, a lot of people realize that they can make money, more money working for themselves than working for people. And so that could be part of the reason why the unemployment went down. Possibly also that persons who have been trying to find jobs and not finding jobs became frustrated, and so they just drop out of the market. Or possibly also those persons who are of working age who may have been unemployed migrate and gone somewhere else to see if they can get employment so they can take care of their families. Whatever the reason is, they're saying that in July we had 3.6% unemployment rate, and by October, the next quarter, it went down to 3.5%. So the question again we ask ourselves, given the circumstances that the IMF suggested and gave us an example of how we should consider a recession by the way in which they do it in the United States, is the Jamaican economy in recession? We found that some industries had declined, but some industries had increased. And more importantly, we found that unemployment had been decreasing. We also know that there was a hurricane which interrupted our production. The question now we need to ask ourselves is, before the hurricane, what really was the state of the economy? Because it is the state of the economy that is going to tell us when we recover from the hurricane damages, what is likely to be our economic health. If we were in a bad shape and there were no growth, that will continue after we recover. If, on the other hand, we were growing, then that would be expected to continue. Why? Because it means that people would have been investing because the consumers were spending, and they were spending because they had disposable income. See what I'm saying? Yes. So let us now continue to read the article which spoke of our economic decline for 2024. It says, economic activities last year failed to deliver growth as real value added for the local economy contracted 0.9% between January to December of 2024. Data from Planning Institute of Jamaica has shown. So it's the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the official body in Jamaica that's responsible for gathering up the information as that committee in the United States does, yes, and make a report as to whether or not the economy is growing or contracting. And they are saying that last year it contracted by less than 1%. It goes on to say, in comparison to 2023, that's a year before, when real gross domestic product is estimated to have grown by approximately 2%. The downturn seen in 2024, PIOJ Director General Dr. Wayne Henry said, comes as a result of lower real value added for both the goods producing and the services industries, which went down 2.3% and 0.3% respectively. Now, what it is that they mean by lower real value added, I am inclined to think that what they're talking about here is that when you take inflation into consideration, that we have actually declined in these areas. So inflation has a way of increasing the price. So it gives the impression that something are going on. But when you take out the inflation that went on for the year, that's when you now begin to see what the real economic situation is. You follow? Yes. And then in addition to taking the inflation out, they try to take out any double counting that may have been taking place. So, for example, one company may manufacture an input, like, for example, let us say in agriculture, you have the production of tomatoes, and then they sell that now to a processor that process the tomato into ketchup. That could end up being a double counting. So they try to reduce that as much as possible so they can know what the real growth in the economy was. Yes, that's my understanding of what it is that you're saying. He went on to say, for the services industry, all industries declined with the exception of electricity and water supply, transport, storage and communication, finance and insurance services, and hotels and restaurants. Henry further said, the economy, which continues to reel from the impacts of weather related shocks brought on since Hurricane Beryl and other hydrological events in the year, took most of its beating in the last two quarters of 2024. So, in the last two quarters of 2024, that's when we experienced negative growth in the economy. Yes, it sounds funny, negative growth. Yes, but that's what they call economic decline. And that was affected, they're saying here, by Hurricane Beryl. It was Hurricane Beryl that brought it about, as well as other hydrological events. And remember, it was raining a lot, and there was another tropical storm. I think it was called Raphael. And so that now affected our economy, especially agriculture. Mhm. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to that because this is the body of the government that is responsible for gathering the information. And when they gather the information for us, it is after that that you have others who would look at the information and interpret what it is saying. You understand? Yes. So I want you to pay close attention. It says the economy which continues to reel from the impacts of weather related shocks brought on since Hurricane Beryl. So it started with Beryl, but it didn't end. So other things were happening in the economy that were weather related, and it has to do with the rain and other hydrological events in the year. Took most of its beating in the last two quarters of 2024. You will remember that Beryl came and hit us in July. July 3 was when it landed in Jamaica. You recall that? Yes, make a note of that now, very important. The article goes on to say, following a flat performance, we saw little to no growth or a meager expansion of 0.1% in the April to June quarter. Gross domestic product output for July to September quarter later fell 3.5%, continuing into the subsequent October to December quarter when it shrank 1.8%. So it's important for you to understand that when they are looking at growth and decline by quarter, that what they're doing is measuring and comparing the quarter before with the quarter after. So when they said that the economy increased between April and June quarter by 0.1%, that was what 0.1% over the January to March period. And then when it came now to the July to September period, it fell. So it fell 3.5% over the previous quarter, right? So it's a quarter by quarter basis, and that's how they're comparing it. And then after that 3.5% decline in July, September, the economy further declined in October to December by 1.8%. They are talking about 1.8% of where the economy was in the previous quarter. You follow? Great. So you will recall the question that I asked, how was the economy doing before Hurricane Beryl in July? What was the performance of the economy? And this segment is going to tell us. It says, prior to the reported downturns, the economy registered some 12 quarters of consecutive growth since the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic. You heard that? So before the economic downturn, when did that occur? In the July to September quarter. That's when the hurricane hit. And they're saying before that, including the April to June meager increase of 0.1%, we had 12 consecutive quarters of economic growth. And this has been occurring since the COVID. Now, 12 quarters is 3 years. Am I right? Well, why not let us work it out together? Before my maths are so hot, So I'm going to see what we get, right? So the quarter of July to September is July, August, September. That's 3 months. And between October and December, it's October, November, December, 3 months. And we have 12 months in a year. So a year has 4 quarters. So if we're talking about 12 consecutive quarters of economic growth, since COVID, we're talking about 3 years. Now remember, it's last year we're talking about. So they are saying since 2021, when they opened the economy, since 2021, we have had in all of the quarters then economic growth. So we were doing well. It's not big growth, 10% and all them kind of something, but it's economic growth nonetheless. And then the hurricane hit. And it was after that that we had the economic decline for obvious reasons, right? Hurricane mash up things, and it's going to take a little while for them to come back. Let's take the electricity. When the hurricane hit a good part of the island, for quite a while, the people in St. Elizabeth did not have light because of the damage. So that would have affected and resulted in a small decline in economic growth. Very small. So now that you understand, let me just read this little section and then I move on. As most major industries recorded declines during the last quarter, and that will be the October to December quarter. The finance and insurance sector, as well as that for transport, storage, and communication, were said to be the only two registering growth of 1% each. And of course, we also know that there was a tiny growth in the employment figure as well. The unemployment rate went down during that very same period. Okay? All right. We're getting it now, right? Yes. So when Dr. Henry said this, amid the two consecutive quarters of contraction and recurring talks of a recession, Henry said the economy, despite significant challenges stemming from the hydrological shocks and the resultant downturn in output, was not found to be in a recession at this time. You hear that? The PIOJ head is saying that the economy, despite the fact that we've had a downturn in the economy resulting from Hurricane Beryl, Tropical Storm Raphael, and the rains which followed after, the hydrological shocks, and it resulted in the downturn in the output of the country. Jamaica was not found to be in a recession at this time. In other words, it's too soon to call. That's what he's saying. To this end, the contractions, he said, are likely to be temporary and should see the economy returning to growth in the near term or as early as the current January to March quarter, as the prospects continue to be generally positive. What is he saying? The long and short of what he's saying is that based upon the trajectory of the economy prior to the hurricane, once we recover from the hurricane back to where we were before, he's saying we may very well go back to seeing the growth that was temporarily interrupted by the hurricane and other weather events. And he is expecting the growth to return in this quarter, January to March. Now, that of course depending on whether other weather events occur during this quarter or any quarter in the future. But that's what he's saying. So I want you to pay very close attention, though, to what he said here. Yes, he said it's a temporary matter, and we should get back to our growth path that we were on for the past 3 years since COVID until a hurricane struck. Right? Pay close attention to that because I want you now to listen to what Mark Golding said. And you listen with a view that Mark Golding is a man who will be facing the general elections in a few months. And he needs to present the economy in such a bad light that people who believe him will think that the economy is doing very badly and therefore they need to vote for him instead of Andrew Holness. That's his political strategy, and he's entitled to his political strategy if he thinks that that will work for him. So his utterances of late is to try and feed into the Jamaican psyche that the economy is in economic decline and that Holness cannot manage the economy. And from now on, the boom that we were having, so to speak, 3 years of economic growth, meager though it was, that is not going to continue any longer. And we need a new direction. That's a for him argument. But I want you to bear in mind that what the PIOJ man said, who is not a political person, he is not seeking to be elected to any office. And he said that Jamaica had 12 consecutive quarters of economic growth, 3 years of economic growth. Now listen to what Mark Golding is saying, and let us square what he's saying with the facts. This was he commenting on the throne speech of the Deputy Governor General at the recent opening of Parliament And what the Deputy Governor General outlined was the government's plans for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins April 1.
My immediate impression of it is as follows. I think it was very low-key and disappointing insofar as a forward-looking document. It really didn't deliver anything, I would say, that was likely to excite any voters. It was really more trying to spin things that have already taken place in a particular light. But in terms of announcing new things, there was very little in it of note, that would catch people's attention. There was nothing in it to speak to how they plan to deal with the recession that Jamaica has experienced in the second half of 2024, with 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, which is the definition of a recession. But when we see that report on food insecurity and the recession in the economy, we are very concerned about that. And the reality is that the economy is not doing well. They aren't speaking to how they intend to turn it around.
So, of course, the Englishman clearly ignored what it was that the head of the PIOJ said, Dr. Wayne Henry, because, of course, that would not suit his narrative. He needs to give the impression that things are going bad. Anyway, let us now listen to what Ralston Hyman had to say. And this interview was done by Colin Bell in December of 2024, which is last year, with Ralston Hyman. And I'm telling you, I was surprised at some of the things I heard coming from Ralston's mouth.
So at the end of December, it would be the second quarter that the economy is in decline.
Decline, yeah, man.
And 2 quarters of decline means
a recession. So anywhere in the world in economics, that is what it means.
2 quarters of decline equals a recession.
And anywhere in the entire world in economics.
That's economics. That's economics 2.5.
Yeah, man.
2 quarters anywhere of decline means a recession.
Not only is he arrogant and rude, he's also stupid, because there are people who will check information out. He's calling Dennis Chung, a chartered accountant, a charlatan. Him not listen to those people for making a comment that was a correct comment to make at the time. Putting himself forward as the financial analyst that knows it all. And him did not know, based upon the world standard set by the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and all of them, anywhere in the world, according to him, that the only consideration for whether or not the country is in a state of recession is not the gross domestic product alone. Anywhere in the world, they know that the gross domestic product is only one indicator of a recession. There are many others that you must take into consideration before you start to pronounce recession on your economy. These people are a mouthpiece, right? And are not to be taken seriously, because they are not there to educate people. They are there to give information which suits the narrative that they want to give. And in the process, what they are doing, these charlatan, which he should look in the mirror if he wants to see a charlatan, the effect of this partial information that he's giving people is that it will cause the consumers to lose confidence to the extent that they listen to him. The laborites will not listen to him for sure. And it would also cause or may cause the investors not to invest, because if the consumers' confidence go down and them stop spend or them spend less, it's going to affect business, which means that the business people may have to cut people, or they may have to just carry on with the people that they have until things get better.
What does a recession mean for the Jamaican economy?
It means that the economy is in trouble and it needs rehabilitation. So if you notice, all of the 3 private sector leaders yesterday now calling upon the banking system in order to cut the interest rates in order to stimulate the economy. Net rate.
Continue.
Philip Ramsey, yeah, and Sydney Swaits from JMA, PSOJ, all of them know, so that we're on the same page.
But how many months you been calling for this?
Precisely, but because I'm ahead of them, remember them don't really know anything about economics. Right? Everyone powerful organizations and everything, but them don't really know anything about economics, so it have to start reaching them in them pocket before them can toilet.
And the Bank of Jamaica, what did the Bank of Jamaica do yesterday?
Yeah. The Bank of Jamaica cut the interest rates again yesterday by another 25 basis points.
So he's way ahead of them, and he anticipated that we needed interest rate to cut. But did you hear what he said? That the Bank of Jamaica again lowered the interest rate, right? So the PSOJ people is the one that he might rank himself with, but them don't know about economics, right? Them only when them feel in them pocket that them understand what's going on. So they are now calling for further decrease in interest rate. Now you remember that the idea of decreasing interest rate is to stimulate consumer spending. They want you to go out there now and say I can borrow some money to buy, this or that, and spend some money in the economy, and that now will make the business make money and stimulate the growth, because they will now start to invest once them see the things them fly off of them shelves. You understand? Yes, so that is what the Bank of Jamaica is doing, reducing interest rate to stimulate consumer spending.
So the rate is now 6% per annum.
How many times have the Bank of Jamaica cut rate in the last year?
This is the fourth cut. Fourth cut now.
Fourth cut since 2024.
Yeah, man.
And the commercial banks have not responded.
Have not responded.
So you heard that. This question showed him up, because he was seeking to give the impression that these private sector people don't know nothing, only him one know, right? He told us there was a 2.8 decline in the economy for the July to September quarter, and the government needs to take corrective action, as if the government was doing nothing. And then now he finally admits that the Bank of Jamaica has decreased the interest rate 4 times during 2024. So the Bank of Jamaica has been proactive, and maybe had they not decreased the interest rate by 4 times during the year, if they had not done that, maybe the economic decline would have been worse.
Yep.
But this recession that Jamaica is in right now, this has not been caused by anything on the global stage.
No, it is caused by government policy.
So how them say the government doing so well?
Well, you have to ask them, because you can't be in a recession and doing well. A recession is contrary to doing well.
It is said that a man's reputation is only as good as his next mistake. Well, I said that. Ralston Hyman, by this comment, has just shattered his reputation and has now proven himself to be the charlatan he's accusing people of. Or is it that he's just getting old? How could he have said that the 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline, and he was anticipating the second one, remember it? He was still in December, right? How could he have said that the recession that he said the economy was in was caused by government policy, without taking into consideration the weather events, Hurricane Beryl in July, Tropical Storm Raphael, and the whole heap of rain that was falling during the whole period? How could Ralston Hyman say, after 3 consecutive years of growth, 12 consecutive quarters of growth in the economy, that the reason that caused the decline, according to him, the recession, was government policy? How him square that? By the omission of these events in his analysis as a financial analyst, the listeners would be left with a distinct impression there were no conditions that occurred locally, and therefore what happened was the government's policies, which, by the way, is the same policies that the PNP left behind. The Holness administration is continuing with the policy that was developed in that IMF program. It's a continuation, right? And we're reaping the reward. He is the one now that is setting the priorities as to how the monies that we are collecting is to be spent. That's what you're seeing that is happening here, that the Laborites are all very excited about, and Mark Golding is trying his best to downplay, right? Now, when Ralston Hyman said something like that, he just shattered any credibility that he had, and he had a lot. Is it that he's getting old and shaky? Because his voice may sound youthful, but as you can see, he ain't no youth anymore. How could he have made a mistake like that? Is it that he is no longer the Ralston that he used to be, and therefore forgot that there was a weather event in Jamaica when he said that? Because if he did not forget, and he knew very well that what he's saying is not true, or in any event, he had deliberately or maybe inadvertently omitted to give us a critical piece of information that would explain why the economy declined and may well be headed for the recession that he anticipated will occur. Then if he had forgotten it, he would have inadvertently misled the comrades, but if he did not forget, then he would have lied to those comrades. And that was not right. Your job, Ralston, remember, is to educate, educate, educate. That was what you've been doing for years. How the hell did you manage to find yourself in this position? How did you find yourself in this position? How did you come to make a comment like that? Is it that you forgot when you were speaking about the economic decline that there was a hurricane in July, Hurricane Beryl, which mashed up most of the country, especially our farming area, St. Elizabeth? Did you forget that? Because if you forgot, Ralston, maybe it's time you think about packing it in. Give the thing a break. Because that is something that Ralston of old would not have forgotten. So I'll chalk it up to a mistake, but I sincerely hope, Ralston, that I do not hear this kind of error coming from you in future.
All right, some of the things you've been calling for a long time, Ralston, and even in Mark Gold in 2022-2023 budget presentation, he was saying that put an extra $40 billion in the social net to help Jamaican people. They told us that if we did that, the economy would have crashed. We see them doing that now. What is the difference?
Them spend billions and billions and billions and billions for that. And we don't see no problem. We end up in a recession. If we had done that earlier, we wouldn't be in this problem now.
Ralston, come here, my son. Come. I've been talking behind your back. Come let me talk before your face now. Come and sit down beside Auntie Michelle. What you just said a while ago? The $20,000 that the government was giving back to the taxpayers, right? Which amounted to billions of dollars. You are saying that it's too late. That's basically what you're saying. They should have started to do it long time, and if they had done so, we would not have been in the position that we are in now. I don't get you. What you're talking about, the position that the country is in now has nothing to do with government policies, right? It had to do with the hurricane that struck the island. You have left that out of your analysis, Mr. Financial Analyst. And therefore, the information that you're providing to people is faulty because you've left out critical pieces of information in your analysis. Based on what you're saying, though, you may not realize that you're saying it, is that now that the government has parceled out this money, $20,000 given to people, we can now expect that that will work its way into the economy and we start to see growth again. You never realize that you say. So when you are anticipating that there will not be any growth, there's going to be a recession because of government policies, you are contradicting yourself. The money in this package, this tax give back package, According to you, had the government done it before, we would not have been in the position that we're in now. Right? And you're not factoring a hurricane in your analysis. So therefore, we can conclude that now that they have done it, then that we can anticipate that there will be further growth in the economy, even above what we were experiencing in those 12 quarters of increase. Because as soon as the economy is back to where it was, then this additional money will only increase the growth in the economy. Not true, Ralston? Yes. Now, my people, I want you to tell me in the comment section if you come to that conclusion as well. If not, tell me why you disagree. Well, I think we're going to leave it there. I sincerely hope Ralston Hyman corrected himself in that next interview that he had with Shaka. I don't know, but that is where it was in December of last year. So let me leave it here for today. Thank you so much for joining me, for sharing, liking, subscribing, and leaving your comments in the comments section. So until next time, take very good care of yourselves and walk good.